What is up, everybody? Happy game week. We can finally say that college football has officially returned. It is week one, and the SEC is wasting no time diving into the deep end. Some of the best matchups that we'll see all season happening in the conference this weekend. What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor Davis, joined by my friend and co host, Jason Campbell. You are listening to or watching, for all of our YouTube live watchers, SEC State of Mind. And Jason, I think we just got to go right into this one, or else we're going to end up talking for hours because, like I said at the top, the SEC is kicking things off at the highest possible level. Some of the biggest games in the country happening for the SEC. So we each have divvied up a few of these big name games. We're going to start with Jason's got three, I've got three. So buckle up, people. There's a lot of headlines for us to cover. Also want to give a shout out to our partners at FanDuel. Thanks for bringing all of the action to the SEC fans across the country. So Jay, welcome. Let's freaking get into it. What games you got your eye on this weekend?
Oh, what's up, everybody? I tell you what, there's a lot of good games this weekend. You couldn't have had a better opening. I guess you can say second week now because we had some games last weekend. So I can't say opening week, but I'll say this. In the SEC, it is the opener.
Yep.
And when you talk about Florida State versus Alabama, everyone's going to be tuned in watching that game. You got a new quarterback for both teams, Ty Simpson for Alabama, who's a young, touted young guy yet to play for real. So what would he look like going against Mike Norvell and the FSU Tigers? When you talk about Florida State, you talk about their quarterback, Tommy Castellanos, the transfer from Boston College. You talk about someone that's electric. And guess who's his offensive coordinator is? Gus Malzahn. So Gus Malzahn has always loved this rivalry between Auburn and Alabama, and now he gets the chance to continue it as an offensive coordinator this weekend against Alabama as the offensive coordinator. So you know he's going to have some things up his sleeve, Taylor. You know he's going to try to throw the kitchen sink at Coach DeBoer and the Crimson Tide. And yeah, there's some question marks right now in Alabama around the running back room. You know, will Miller be available? I'm not sure what the reports are, so I'm not going to speculate. But, there's been some things coming out that he may be out for the first couple of weeks of the season for them. So
latest report is that he will be out.
Oh, so he will be out. So that means you'll probably get a heavy dose of Ryan Williams in different ways and forms of trying to get the ball in his hands as their star player. But, that's one of the games. But let's go Clemson and LSU.
How about it?
Wow. Two big-time quarterbacks. Clemson led by that defensive line. You got Parker. And then you also got Peter Woods, projected to be first-round draft picks. Their secondary is loaded. So people got Clemson picked to win the national championship by some. Mm-hmm. So, but when you think LSU, Brian Kelly has lost his first three openers.
Right.
Two to Florida State and one to USC. So will he get off the losing track in opening weekend in Death Valley, the second Death Valley up in Clemson this weekend?
I mean, it feels like he has to, right? No one is shying away from the expectations that are on Brian Kelly, not just getting off to a fast start, but continuing it because they arguably have one of the most stacked and experienced rosters in college football. And that's not a guarantee anymore these days. Well, obviously, we announced last week that our show has expanded. We are covering the entirety of the SEC, but it is also no secret that Jason had quite a career at Auburn. He still is involved with the Tigers as the radio color analyst for Auburn Sports Network. He will be in Waco this weekend for what is sure to be a huge opener for the Auburn Tigers facing Baylor on Friday night. I know you got plenty of takes on this one, Jay. Let's hear it.
Man, Friday night is usually for high schools, right? I think Friday night lights, and now they move my game up a day, so it moves my food up the charts extra day. So
true.
Yeah, I don't get a chance to binge a little bit in Waco as I normally would on a Saturday night game. But, since it's Friday, I got to kind of get out of traffic. I got to find my way to the restaurant. Taylor, if someone got some restaurant spots in Waco, let me know. I hear about the Magnolia and all those different things down there I need to go tour. So we'll find out. But when you talk about this game, FanDuel Sportsbook has this as a Auburn winning by 2.5 points.
Okay.
So That's the spread, 2.5 points Auburn. That's a close game. So to me, I'm not really big on, oh man, opening night is going to tell us exactly what our team is going to be for the year. I think
Mhm.
because of the transfer portal, a lot of teams have different faces in a lot of places, and Auburn has one. You look at Jackson Arnold, the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma. He has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder where he wants to kind of go out and prove to people that, hey, the type of player that I am. And with a supporting cast like he has at Auburn, can he be by the end of the year one of the elite quarterbacks in college football? That would be
Right.
determined throughout the season. But then you talk about the weapons that we have. Eric Singleton, a transfer from Georgia Tech, the number one transfer receiver in the portal. Guy's electric. He's fast. And you mix him with Cam Coleman, who was one of the top receivers coming out of high school a year ago, who came along the second part of the season, looking at the start fast in his second year. So there's a lot of talent on this Auburn side of the ball. When you include Malcolm Simmons, you include Horatio, the transfer from Wake Forest. So everyone wants to say, is the ball going to go in the air because we have all this ability outside? You
Mhm.
still got to be able to run the football. And I
Mhm.
think with this team, it's going to have to be running back by committee for the most part, but it's going to be led by Damari Alston and Crawford. Those two guys running the ball up front. So we'll see what happens in this game. I like the matchup. Dave Aranda is going to be have his team electric, ready to go. I understand they have some injuries on the back end of their defense. So you got to think that they're going to lean heavily on trying to put pressure on our quarterback to make the ball come out and not let our elite receivers get deep down the field. So when you look at this game as a whole, Taylor, Coach Freeze going to his third year said it's going to take 3 seasons to get this roster flipped around, 3 seasons to get Auburn going back to Auburn football. There's a lot of hype around Auburn team, but as well as though, it got to translate onto the football field.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it on paper, you feel much better about Auburn from a roster and personnel perspective. I think it's time, and I don't mean this as a shot. It's time for Hugh Freeze to outcoach somebody. It's time for the one at the helm to be leading this thing appropriately. And obviously there's going to be a lot of emphasis on the play of Jackson Arnold because, as has been seen in the past, if you miss at the quarterback position, things fall apart at the seams. But I've said this on other podcasts. I don't feel like Jackson Arnold needs to be perfect because of the weapons that they've put around him, but he has to be an efficient game manager. That's always such a hot button, phrase, right? But that was really what was lacking last year, because you could say, okay, well, you had a lot of weapons last year and Auburn did. And unfortunately, there wasn't that efficient game manager when times got tough. I mean, you look at the turnover fiasco that was the Arkansas game. You look at an unbelievable just fall apart in the Oklahoma game. Very small, minute details that ultimately sent Auburn to another losing season. That has to change, and those changes have to start week 1. And I got to go back to the LSU Clemson game because the storylines around that one are at the highest level, and I don't think that it's unnecessary hype. There is every expectation that LSU and Clemson could both be a caliber team that lifts a trophy at the end of the season. So it almost makes you wonder, like, does LSU kind of regret this scheduling decision? Because, like, it just so happened that this year, Brian Kelly, coaching staff, continuity has been established. The roster has really come together. You convince a guy like Garrett Nussmeier to stay in college football, and having continuity and consistency at the quarterback position from a veteran at the same program is unheard of these days. You convince him to do that. You've got a stout defense. Whit Weeks really came along well last year. Both of his brothers are there. And last year I had LSU, and Coach Kelly told us he thinks the youngest Weeks brother could be the best one. So you've got that trio. You've got linebacker Harold Perkins, who's back and healthy. They're about to let him go. LSU has the makings of a championship team, but they start out with Clemson, who has one of the most stacked rosters that they've had in years. Arguably the best shot at a championship since probably the Deshaun Watson era. I mean, Dabo finally went into the portal and got some pieces that were necessary. He's been reluctant about it for years, but he got some really impact gets. And this defensive front at Clemson is one of the best that you will see anywhere. And so for LSU's offensive line, as composed, I've covered Garrett Nussmeier. He is composed. He is very at peace when you talk to him. He's a chill guy. you have to give him some time and protection against a defensive front in Clemson that is going to be chomping at the bit to make him uncomfortable and to force errors out of him. You've got a
Yeah.
Caden Durham at running back position that had a
Mhm.
great year, but you don't really feel like it's necessarily going to be a ground and pound game because of what Clemson has up front. So I think that this one is determined in the trenches. Cade Klubnik has just as much of a resume as Garrett Nessmeyer does. He's been there for several years. He's learned under Dabo for several years. They both have that. They've got weapons. They've got defenses that they feel really good about. I think it's going to be LSU's offensive line against Clemson's defensive line who can hold up.
Ooh, I like that. I also like LSU new receivers
Mm-hmm.
versus Clemson DBs.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the transfers that LSU was able to get in the transfer portal, you get Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, you get Destin Hill as well, and then you also got Barryon. I think Brown is from Kentucky, Nick Anderson from
Yeah.
Oklahoma. So you got some guys that came in to LSU's always stacked their receiver. It's almost like they just find them out of the trees and everything. But Taylor, I like that game, but my biggest game of the weekend for me is Texas, Ohio
Ohio
State.
State has to be.
Man, how's that game not at nighttime? But
I know.
it's neither here or there. When you talk about that game, everyone wants to put so much emphasis on Arch Manning.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so. He's had an uncle and both uncles to be all times. They're considered the first family of football. So he comes from a rich heritage of the sport. But he's only thrown 95 pass attempts in his first 2 years at Texas. And we're already ready to put him as the Heisman front winner.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much talent in college football this year. And I think people are putting added pressure on this kid. Like, let him
For
play.
sure.
Some of the games that he played in was against UTSA and Colorado State, I Bleav.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy that still has to go out and prove himself, but he also got to work himself into being a full-time quarterback. Because most times we got in a game, they ran him a lot more than they let him throw. So,
Right.
but you look at Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith is the first name that pops off. You know that Ryan Day is coming off a championship. You know that this team is ready to prove to everybody they have a new quarterback as well. Is Ohio State, can they run it back again?
Yeah.
That's going to be the question mark there. When you win a championship, everyone immediately after the next 2 days start looking for the next year. You don't even really get a chance to enjoy it. But Ryan Day has been a good coach. You know that he's going to have this team ready to play. But for me, though, in this game, I think Ohio State wins the game on their defense and Jeremiah Smith. But then Texas wins the game if Arch is able to get on the edge and create problems for that Ohio State defense at home, because they don't know what Sarkisian's really good at play designing. So you put him with a guy that's very talented like Arch, who can throw and run, it puts a lot of pressure on your defense. So can Texas keep off Ohio State on the sidelines at home? And can they defense put pressure on their new quarterback as well and create turnovers?
Man, I mean, the weight of the world is on Texas right now. I mean, preseason number 1, you're being picked to win the Natty left, right, and center. And yes, he's a Manning, but he hasn't proven it yet. And I mean, I hate all the pressure. I'm sure some Texas fans are like, can we not, though? Like, let's give the kid a minute. He has all the makings. Don't get me wrong. It's literally in his DNA. But let the guy get his feet under him before we're already putting a Heisman in his hands. It's a bit out of control. The converse of that is the hype around LSU. That has proof in the pudding. We've actually seen what Nuss can do. We know what Harold Perkins can do, and he's coming back healthy. So I get the LSU hype, and honestly, the emphasis on Brian Kelly getting it done, as unfortunate of a reality as it is, fan bases are no longer patient in today's age of college football, with transfer portal and conference realignment, and now scheduling changes and an expanded playoff. Every single fan base believes that they should be capable of a postseason team, if not a championship team, every given year. No longer are fans accepting it takes time, there's a plan for a rebuild. Everyone's kind of over that adage. And so that certainly points the finger at LSU. And Texas fans are ready to be on top of the mountain with a Manning leading the way. We'll see what he's able to do early in his career. A couple more that I think are kind of flying a little less on top of the radar, simply because LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State, Texas. I mean, seriously, Jay, those are playoff matchups. Like that, it's insanity that we are getting that
It gives
week
you an
one.
early glimpse of what's going to happen. But
For
Taylor,
sure.
you got two really good games that you're about to talk about too that I'm very interested in. It's not getting a lot of hype, but Beamer going back to the place that kind of grew him up.
Well, luckily it's in a neutral site because I think going back to Blacksburg for him would be very difficult. They'll be in Atlanta, but I do think that that game is riddled with a lot of emotion for him. And I think if you watch the Netflix documentary, you got to peek into that a little bit. And he said, anything that I did tied to Virginia Tech, I was known as Frank's son. And he really has wanted to establish himself as Shane Beamer as the head coach. And boy, did they do that last year in Columbia, coming off an exciting 9-win season, one that ended in a huge win over their in-state rival Clemson. They really thought they were right on the cusp of a playoff bid. The committee did not see their argument in their favor, but I think that there is so much momentum for South Carolina heading into this year. A lot of which because of quarterback Lenora Sellers. I think everyone got to see last year what he's capable of. And his recruiting story was always interesting to me. Coach Beamer shared a little bit in depth about it last year that Lenoris was very much overlooked, wasn't really on anyone's radar. He came to a camp and Coach Beamer was just laser focused on the guy. And it's paid off. I think what you saw last year is his ability to improvise and scramble and get those dirty yards. And he's a big dude. So he is hard to bring down. And you face a Virginia Tech team that is known for bring your lunch pail, hard-nosed defense. But this is a very different test that they're going to have in stopping a guy like Lenora Sellers. And then when you flip the side of the ball, Dylan Stewart off the edge at South Carolina. Y'all, some guys are overhyped. This kid isn't. Okay. Dylan Stewart is a freak, okay? And he is still young, which is crazy enough. He's built like a grown man. He looks like he could play tight end. Like he's a freak of an athlete. He returns for the Gamecocks as well. So I think the pieces that you have in continuity, the confidence that they gained last season, really feeling like they're starting to get back on the map in the SEC. I have a lot of faith that they're just going to build on that. Lenora Sellers last year threw for over 2,500 yards to go along with 674 yards on the ground. I fully believe that they're going to tap into that. And here's why. They bring Mike Shula in as offensive coordinator and play caller. And if you know anything about a Mike Shula offense, he likes to get creative and he likes to be up tempo. It fits the skill set of Lenora Sellers so well. And Shane Beamer is no stranger to taking some risks. Okay. We all love some Beamer ball. So this to me is a match made in heaven. I'll be surprised if that doesn't work really well. So that matchup first to start the year, South Carolina is looking to make a mark, but Virginia Tech is very tough. And Brent Pry is, I don't want to say he's on the hot seat, but I would say his seat is rather warm. He does bring back Kyron Drones, the dual threat quarterback themselves, and he's no slouch either. So Dylan Stewart's going to have a day trying to get after Kyron and get him uncomfortable. I think a big key in this one is going to be clock management. I think Virginia Tech is going to try and run the clock down, keep Lenora Sellers and his scramble ability on the sidelines for as long as you can, because that actually bit Virginia Tech a little bit last year. They started their season with an overtime loss to Vanderbilt in Nashville because of the alternative. Vandy ran the clock out, and every time Diego would come, they would chew the clock. Diego Pavia, also known for his improv scramble skills, and Virginia Tech didn't have enough in the can to overcome that. So I think that South Carolina will kind of lean on that and know that, like, hey, when we're out here, we got to make the most of it, because I think that will be part of Virginia Tech's game plan.
Yeah, all these games, get your popcorn ready early, get your ice cream ready at night. Either way, you just kick back and relax because there's some great games. Yeah, there's some great games to watch because as a whole, when you talk about Virginia Tech, Kyron Jones is a big dude.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be hard to bring down. And Sellers is a big dude. But to me, everything starts with all these teams up front. Who can protect their quarterback the best and which team gets off to a fast start. So in these games, early turnovers hurt your football team. You saw it last week in the K-State and Iowa State matchup. So you got to protect the ball early in these football games. You got to find a way to get your quarterbacks into a rhythm because there's a lot of new quarterbacks on some of these teams going into hostile environments. And the first thing you want to do is trying to get them acclimated to the game and not in a position where they're trying to force things to happen. Right. So I think over that, but you think about coaches as a whole, this is a veteran coaching staff across the SEC. when you think about it as a whole. So you got an interesting game this weekend. You get a chance to see Mississippi State up close as well. So, that's another team that no one's really talking about. And we'll have to figure out, like, hey, what does Mississippi State do in year 2 of Coach Levy?
Well, there's a lot of question marks across the SEC, even with some of the faces that we're used to seeing. Mark Stoops is the longest tenured in the SEC right now, and Kentucky is going to start Zach Calzada, who has been around for quite a while now in the SEC.
Zach was at Auburn, but never played. Interesting.
Yes, he was at Auburn. He was at Texas A&M and did play a good bit, showed glimpses of greatness. But I think that another big question mark and another game that's kind of gone under the radar a little bit is Tennessee-Syracuse. Obviously, Tennessee was in the headlines all offseason because of the dramatic departure of Nico Iamaleava. And while fans were very disappointed in how does Tennessee build from this, not to take away from the guy's talent, because he certainly was, but this wasn't a team that was beating down ranked opponents often. They had the win over Alabama, but I mean, like, he hadn't proven enough. And so while I think they will be less far along than they would have been had he stayed, I actually think a bigger loss is Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, that kid tore things up on the ground. Replacing him is insane, and it's been overshadowed by Nico's departure. But for Syracuse, they're also replacing a quarterback. Kyle McCord has moved on to the NFL. They're coming off a really exciting year, though, under head coach Fran Brown. And here's the kicker. Fran Brown was Georgia's defensive backs coach in 2022 and 2023. So he is well-versed in facing a Josh Heupel offense, let alone with a new quarterback who's trying to get acclimated to the system. So I think this one could be sneakier than people realize. Tennessee is going to need a minute to kind of get into a groove. All reports are that Joey Aguilar is going to be their starting quarterback. He transfers in from App State. A lot of potential, a lot of promise. One thing you do have to note, though, he had 14 interceptions last year. He was a bit turnover happy. So that cannot be part of a Josh Heupel offense. But they still have a lot of weapons on defense that are going to make things super difficult for redshirt sophomore quarterback Ricky Collins, who transfers to Syracuse from LSU. So again, some familiarity with the SEC, just hasn't played in it himself. But you look to guys like Boo Carter and German McCoy in the secondary for the Vols that have played a lot of ball and will be coming after him. So those are definitely some interesting ones to keep your eyes on as we come into the last few minutes of this show, Jay. We got to talk about the reality of the SEC every year, that coaches have a lot to prove. We touched on it earlier. If you point to one coach in the SEC that you think has the most to prove in week 1, now, of course, we're going to look at the entire body of work as season plays out, but week 1, what coach has to make the biggest statement?
Ooh, man. It's only one?
Yep, just one. We don't have enough time to go over all of them.
I want to talk about my own school. I just go outside of Auburn. Let's go outside of Auburn. I would go with Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I figured.
And the reason I say that is because you got an experienced quarterback that came back for another year that could have left and went to the NFL. You have Harold Perkins, who's supposed to be a dominant defensive player.
Yeah.
Your secondary is supposed to be better this year. Your receiving core is supposed to be second to none. You loaded up. And he's had 3 10-win seasons. Can he get over the hump this year? LSU is a tough place, and they don't have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And they give you 5 years to try to go compete for a national championship.
Yep.
And now that he's heading to year 4, will he make a statement? Because he can make the loudest statement of anybody this first week if he goes and beat Clemson.
You're right.
So that's why I would say Brian Kelly, just because if they lose that game, it puts a lot of pressure on them for the rest of the year and everything.
And I don't think that it won't just be a win. I would argue that may be the best win if LSU goes to Clemson and upset. I don't know if it would be considered an upset. I don't know what the line is or what either of them are ranked, but gets the win over Clemson in their Death Valley. I think that by week 2, LSU is a real national championship contender and has something to prove it. And yes, I think that the Texas-Ohio State game some could be garnered from it. But I would argue LSU and Clemson have the most continuity. We know the most about them. They have the most returners. So a win over Clemson in Clemson, I think, would say so much about LSU that would be carried through the rest of season. Now, they're going to have to maintain those expectations and handle it appropriately, but they've got the veteran guys to do it. I'm going to go a little rogue. I'm going to have one that I think will surprise a little bit of people, because the obvious answers are Hugh Freeze and Brian Kelly. You have a lot to show in week one, and you got to silence a lot of stuff that's happening outside of your building. I think a statement needs to be made by Kalen DeBoer in week one. I think that Alabama has a lot of promise and the makings of another really good team and a really good season. But you've got to show that you can consistently win in the SEC. You have to show that you get it. You bring in Ryan Grubb to be back as your offensive coordinator. The two of you did incredible things over on the West Coast. Michael Penix Jr. lit it up under you guys. You have the opportunity to develop a newer quarterback in Ty Simpson. Get him acting like an Alabama quarterback. The culture, the toughness, the consistency, those have always been pillars of an Alabama football program. And at times last season, that waned a little bit. And the difference is there was a new head coach at the helm. You get the SEC now. You know the ropes. You know what this is about. You know what works and what doesn't. I would imagine year one as a head coach at a program like Alabama, you're following one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. It was a little bit of trial and error. You had to learn that. You don't wear T-shirts on the sideline at football games. That's just not how we do things around here. You got that year under your belt. You go show that you get that, and that this team has the same discipline, consistency, and culture that Alabama football has been built on for decades. You show that week one against Florida State.
Wow. Taylor, you brought it today. Man, the opener, the SEC state of mind. Like, the information and the details, you brought it. There's only one team we really hadn't talked about. Two, and then we can close that.
Okay.
Ole Miss. What would Ole Miss do this year? They have a talented quarterback in Austin Simmons. They also are known for their offense, but last year their defense was top 5 nationally. So they lost a lot of players off that defense. Will they reload this year defensively in the transfer portal? And then Vanderbilt. Coach Lee has gotten Vanderbilt and Pavia Mania going crazy in your city, Nashville. I bet I see you wearing Pavia jerseys in Nashville, Taylor.
It's happening. It's happening.
This guy's been in college for 7 years now, like fully taking advantage of the NIL and revenue share opportunities.
For sure.
I do not blame him. Get what you can get, young fella.
Yeah.
But Vanderbilt, some tough teams got to go there this year, and they can mess up a lot of people's record.
And that's what they want to do now. They fully believe that they're capable of it after the season that they were this close to beating Texas as well. We all know about the Alabama win, but they were right there with the Longhorns. So that's an interesting one to follow. We actually didn't mention a lot, Jason. Missouri has sort of been in a quarterback battle. They could be a sleeper team. Arkansas, under Travis Williams, a defensive coordinator, your former teammate, and obviously they pulled off some impressive wins last year. What did they look like? One of my storylines to watch this season is going to be Florida, because I think that the way that last season unfolded for them, the injury to Graham Mertz, unfortunately kind of forcing the hand of Billy Napier to go ahead and play freshman DJ Lagway at quarterback, it actually ended up serving them well. And DJ is as advertised. As young as and inexperienced as he was, he led them to some wins that no one predicted at the beginning of the season. And one of, if not the toughest schedule in the nation last season. So that's nothing to scoff at. He returns, and he is the future and the present of this program. However, he missed spring practice and most of fall camp. He's been dealing with both a calf and shoulder injury. Head coach Billy Napier said this week that he is going to start and play this week in their opener against Long Island University. How long, though? You have to play that very smart, because you have the first 2 weeks. If you look at Florida's schedule, once again, they start with LIU. Week 2, South Florida comes to town, a little bit higher of a level, not when you look past. Week 3, they're playing LSU. All right. We got no time to be getting guys healthy. And they have had the list of injuries that have been in and out of fall camp practices. Edge LJ McCray dealt with a lower body injury. Eugene Wilson, Dallas Wilson, Trayon Webb, Aiden Mizell, they've all missed time during fall camp. So as if last year wasn't enough of a test physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the things for Florida Gators fans, and specifically head coach Billy Napier, you're heading into season feeling much better. And oh, dang, the injury bug is hitting your entire team. So that's one to watch for, because I think that Florida could sneak up and really be one to watch in the SEC if these guys can stay healthy. So I think that that's one to watch for. Also, really interesting, there are a few rule changes around college football. I want to make sure our listeners are aware of that. It is no longer that when a call is reviewed, it will be confirmed or stand. It is just across the board that the calls are upheld. There is no more distinction if they confirm it, if they think the call was right on the field. Nope, everything, if the call, unless it's being overturned, every call is just going to be upheld. We also have a rule change with faking injuries, and I am glad we are doing this because this has been a real problem. If a player very evidently fakes an injury, he's going to run and then, oh, whoops, drops, and all of a sudden my ankle hurts. That team is going to be charged a timeout. If there are no more timeouts left, if they have utilized all their timeouts, they will incur a 5-yard penalty. So this is an attempt to get these players to stop trying to give their teams an advantage by faking an injury. Some people are calling for the player or coach to be fined instead, but this is the rules committee's attempt at getting that down. So we do have some changes this year. And like we said, no shortage of drama that is sure to ensue in the SEC as early as week 1. Before we wrap this up, Jay, I got to ask you the tough question. It's what I do here. And if anyone in the comments wants to add in their prediction as well, if one SEC team gets upset this week, who is it?
Oh, gosh, put me on the spot.
That's what I do.
Man, I wouldn't necessarily call it an upset, but FSU beating Alabama.
That would absolutely be an upset. What are you talking about?
You know,
You think Bama could lose to the Seminoles?
Yeah, knowing that Bama could lose to the Seminoles.
Okay. I didn't have that on my bingo card, Jason.
I'm just saying, look at it. Ty Simpson's a new quarterback.
He is.
Florida State just renovated their stadium, so the environment's going to be crazy. But then
they had a terrible season.
You lost the person you're supposed to lean on in the first couple of weeks while you acclimate your quarterback, and Miller, the running back, is out. So the offensive line's got a lot of pressure on them to protect. And they're going to double cover my man Ryan Williams. So to me, it's setting up to look like a potential upset.
Look, this is a tough question, I recognize, because we don't want to pick against any of the SEC teams, but I do see that. And mentioning your protection without starting running back Jam Miller, there are also reports coming out that right guard Jaden Roberts is questionable for this week. So back to that protection of Ty Simpson, they may be without a key piece on the front as well. My team that could end up upset, I'm low-key scared of this fan base, so please don't come for me. I think Tennessee fans could end up having a difficult start week 1. I think that Fran Brown is a really fantastic head coach, and his background specifically as a DB coach at Georgia and how much stock they put against Tennessee, specifically that matchup, I think he'll have his guys very well prepared. So if I had to pick one, I'm not saying I'm calling for that to happen, but if I had to pick an SEC team that may end up with an upset week 1, I think I would go Vols. But look, there is so much that could transpire. Let's think back to week 1 last year. Like I said, Virginia Tech was upset by Vanderbilt, who was on no one's radar. I remember North Dakota State sent Colorado into overtime. They had them on the ropes. Like, week 1 is nothing what we expect it to be, people, but we can guarantee it will be entertaining. So, Jay, tell everybody where they can find you on your coverage this weekend.
Well, before we let you guys go, Texas A&M fans and Oklahoma fans, we got y'all in week 2. We will help break down y'all a little bit more in week 2. Because, you got a veteran quarterback, John Mateer, transferring from Washington State for Oklahoma, and then you got Marcel Reed, the quarterback for Texas A&M, coming back for a second
Returns.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got a lot. So Taylor, you can find me on Twitter, jcam_17, on Instagram, jcampbell17 with the blue check mark. Just so
Subtle
you know.
flex.
But Taylor, let everybody know they can find you besides being at Southern Miss this weekend in the heat, watching the bringing the Mississippi State and Southern Miss game.
Yes, I will be on the call for Mississippi State's not home, but season opener at Southern Miss. Feels like they're home because they're in state playing against Southern Miss, who brings in Charles Huff from Marshall and 20-something of his former players. So it's a total uphaul for Southern Miss. But Mississippi State looks to turn the page after a very disappointing 2-win season last year. Obviously, quarterback Blake Shapen, who suffered a shoulder injury, returns. They are very excited to have him back, along with a stout running back room, some enhancements on the offensive line. Obviously, Jeff Levy being the offensive guy that he is. He actually brings in Phil Lodeholt, who was the offensive line coach with him at Oklahoma. So those two reunite. Fun fact, the offensive line, the average is now 325 at Mississippi State. Last year it was 311. So just fun fact, there's some big old dudes on the front. All right. But they're looking to start off strong because last year was very difficult. But Jeff Levy is there to totally redo this program, and that doesn't come without its growing pains. So I will be on that call, boots on the ground. So I will have plenty of Mississippi State coverage. Our listener who just quoted about Mississippi State, I will have so much to give you next week after getting to talk with the coaches and players. I actually have a call with Blake Shapen here in just a little bit. So you can catch me on ESPN on the broadcast. That is a noon Eastern kick on ESPN. We will be following College Game Day and the last ever Lee Corso headgear pick, which is seriously, I'm not going to be able to watch because then I'll be crying in my opening report. It's going to be emotional, but very special. So you can find me there, Jason, on Auburn Radio Network as the color analyst for Auburn football and their big game Friday night against Baylor. And then come on back next Tuesday, same time, 2 Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. You can join us live right here on YouTube. This audio will also be uploaded as a podcast, so you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Send it to your friends across the SEC as we continue to grow and expand this show. And we will be having guests on over the course of the season. So you want to keep it locked. Subscribe if you haven't already. And again, huge shout out to our new partners, FanDuel, who are making this show possible. That's going to do it for us. Everyone enjoy week 1. What a week it will be. Look forward to the chaos, and we'll break it all down next week. Peace.
Peace.